Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Caregiving Gen X Style. I am Steve Mullen.
And I'm Jennifer Mullen.
Yes, you are. Much like control, dignity is something that can be in short supply as you become older. People forget you might be modest. They talk down to you. They assume you can't do a thing. In this episode, we talk about how to ensure that your elderly loved one keeps as much of their dignity as possible.
Very important.
But first, Jennifer, how's your mom?
My mom is doing well.
Awesome.
Actually, it was very exciting. Again, for those of you who have been listening throughout all of this, it was a rough summer, and I can't believe it, but I recently celebrated a birthday, and typical for our family, everyone comes over, and we usually sit on the deck, and my brother always makes a delicious meal, which he did again this time.
It was delicious.
So good, and a fantastic cake. But Mom was able to come and sit out on the deck and enjoy just a normal family birthday celebration.
Which, let's be honest, there were periods where we didn't think that was ever going to happen again.
I was worried that it was going to be very challenging to get her over here. I mean, there are a couple of steps up into our house, which wasn't really sure that she would be able to do that easily. But I mean, she really is coming along very nicely, building her strength back up. And it was just lovely. And I really did find myself stopping to look around and appreciate the time that we were having together. So it was really nice.
Yes, yeah. It was a very nice day.
Yep. So Steve, how's your mom?
My mom's doing great. She really is. I wanted to talk about something for a little bit. We did an episode some time ago called Is This an Emergency? And, if you recall that episode, we went through a series of scenarios and just discussed, is this really emergency? Is it not an emergency? Is it your elderly loved one just kind of freaking out for no good reason? I have a little bit of an addendum to that. And what I've learned since my mother has been in her new assisted living is that the level of comfort in an environment makes so much difference. It really makes all the difference in the world. Because, I'll give an example. So one of the examples that I gave in the previous episode was that in her old assisted living, the air conditioning went out. And they brought in a little portable unit. Her apartment was fine, but she was just kind of freaking out. She didn't think it was cool enough. She didn't think it was going to work. When were they going to get it fixed? She was just in a tizzy. Mm-hmm. That same thing happened in her current assisted living, but she said, they'll take care of it. It's fine. It's that she trusts them.
Yeah. And they were on top of it very quickly.
And they really were. Yeah. And I will say, the old assisted living, they were kind of on top of it too.
Right.
They really didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But it's the level of trust that she has in this place that she doesn't immediately freak out.
Yes.
And there have been a number of situations, little things that in the old assisted living, I would have had to go down there and smack some heads together to try to get stuff done. And she doesn't worry. She's not worried about things.
Yeah. Yeah.
She trusts them. And it's such a big thing. And I'm more comfortable too. In the old assisted living, I felt like I really had to go there 3 days a week and make my face visible to the whole place and say, you better get things done because I'm here.
Yes.
I don't feel like I have to go there three times a week.
You definitely had a lot more flexibility.
And, with the summer that we've had, it's been tough sometimes.
Well, the summer we've had, the sandwich generation, speaking of which, with Hannah and, her being home for an extended period of time and needing to be driven to doctor's appointments. Like, that's been really helpful that you have been able to just be really flexible with what used to be a pretty rigid schedule.
It was rigid, but I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
And in this place, it's so much more relaxed.
Yes.
And I walk in the door and the community relations director stops and says, "Hey, Steve, how you doing? Is there anything you need today?"
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I trust that he actually means it.
Yeah, he does. I think you're right. I think he does actually mean it.
If they did that in the old place, it would be like, yeah, right, whatever. You're not going to do anything to help me.
Yeah.
So
that's
anyway,
good.
I think, that's an addendum. And I think, is it an emergency really has a lot to do with how comfortable you are in your life and in your situation.
Yep. Yep. So I think let's go ahead and dive into this episode because it is really important for us to talk about this. And for those of you out there caring for your loved ones, this is, I think something that, we all need to remember. I know, Steve, you remember when you were losing your dad, when he was losing his fight against brain cancer many years ago. There was a comment that he made to you that really stuck with you, right?
Yeah, I was helping him get, he was living in a hospital bed in the living room. and I was helping him get out of that and get to the bathroom to get onto the toilet. And once, I got him there, I said, okay, well, I'm going to step out. He said, don't worry about it. Ugh, everyone's seen everything I have. And it was a sign he'd lost control of his body.
Right.
And in turn, lost a good portion of his dignity. And you remember my father, he was a proud man.
Yes.
He really was a proud man. And, it's something that we as caregivers want to avoid as much as physically possible.
Right. Well, I mean, they're tired, they don't feel well, and right, to a certain extent, they just sort of give up a little bit in that area. And I think it is important for us to remember that if they are someone who really does protect their dignity, which frankly, most people do, that you should try to help continue that. Of course, can I just do a little squirrel for a moment, which is that, Gagi doesn't care, just doesn't care, and I think just doesn't care on a normal basis.
And hers is at a different level. She's okay with it. I don't know that my father really was.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think probably in part too, because we've had so many health issues with Gagi over the years. It's just been this really long period of time where there have been times that my brother and I have had to help her with things, and it just doesn't seem to bother her much anymore. We have a guest who stepped in the dining room because I feel like
she may have something to add.
Hannah.
Hi.
Hi.
I have personally walked into my grandmother's house and she has been wearing no clothes. I have personally called my grandmother and she has been wearing no clothes. And she answers the phone on FaceTime.
Yes, I know.
Well, the good news is with her on FaceTime, you usually only see from about the nose up anyway.
It's nose up in the ceiling, so that part's good. But it is true that and in fact, I've had to remind her, so she lives in a small first floor apartment, and sometimes she has where her recliner is, it's like right by the window that's like right by the parking lot, and that's where she will choose to change clothes, put her nightgown on. Sometimes I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like,
There's
whatever.
Parking spaces that pull right up to that window, because I know I pull up there and I can look right in the window.
I mean, in fairness, right, not too often, just the way the parking spaces are at her apartment. But with her, it's comical. It's not always comical.
Right. And it really, okay, so I think what you're saying here is it depends on the type of elderly loved ones. Some of them, they're fine with it. But some of them, like my mother, I mean, I have been obviously very fortunate that she's been in assisted living.
Yes.
And I don't have to do these things. But frankly, I think she might keel over if I had to do those things. I don't think she wants anything to do with that. Right. She doesn't want me bathing her. She doesn't want me helping her with various things. I mean, and we're very fortunate that I don't have to. But she certainly wouldn't want it.
Yeah, no,
not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
and what we're talking about in this episode ties heavily into what we talked about in our control episode, which is one of my favorite ones. But there's more to it than that. And so we've got some tips.
Well, let's start with words, just the words that you are using when you're taking care of someone, particularly as our loved ones get older. They sometimes become incontinent.
And this is just one example, but words do matter.
This is just, yes, one example, but they can become incontinent, which is just, it happens. So they don't, always necessarily know exactly when they have to go to the bathroom, or sometimes they, just can't get there quickly enough. I mean, Gagi had a period post-hospital and skilled nursing stay, for a little while. I think it literally was that she didn't know she had to go to the bathroom. And then it was a period of she knew, and she was trying, but she doesn't move that fast.
And that's my mother's mostly what her problem is.
Right. She's got limited, your mom's in a wheelchair. I mean, she's got limited mobility. So there's nothing to be ashamed of here, because this is just something that happens. But, I think we need to understand that sometimes people don't really want to talk about it.
Right. And first of all, just don't talk about it any more than you absolutely have to, unless they bring it up, unless it's something they need to talk about, like, I don't know if this particular pull-up is working anymore. Maybe we can get a different one, whatever. It's just a fact of life that you just don't need to have long conversations about.
Yep.
And, as we said, words matter. And these are people, by the way, who put diapers on you at one point.
Yep.
And it's probably best not to refer to their absorbent undergarments as diapers.
Yeah, it's really demeaning.
It really is. And they can make your loved one feel like a baby.
Yeah.
And it's just awful. So
I think we've learned to use different words,
right?
I
mean, like with my mother, she wears an adult diaper at night, and she wears, one of the pull-ups, like it depends, during the day. the adult diapers, we call them briefs.
Yep.
They're just briefs.
Briefs, pull-ups.
And the ones during the day, those are pull-ups.
Yeah.
Or depends.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes the
name.
pull-ups even sounds a little weird to me too, but, brief is definitely
You can also
good.
call them absorbent underwear, which is what, on the Depends package, that's what it says, absorbent underwear.
Basically,
anything you can do.
Right. It's just really thinking about the word that you use to make it a little bit less embarrassing. And it's a shame that they have to feel embarrassed because, again, it's just something that happens.
Yeah.
But we, as caregivers, can also, help them through what really is ultimately an embarrassing situation.
And again, this is one example of words matter. It's the one that I came up with when I wrote these copious notes. But you may think of other situations where you can just choose your words carefully.
Yes. Another thing I think is to try really hard not to do everything for them. And I'm definitely guilty of this. But, we talked about this in the control episode. If your parent is capable of doing something, whether it's managing their bills, submitting a maintenance request, if they're living in a place like your mom is, an assisted living facility, or frankly, my mom and her, apartment complex, if they're capable still of doing these things, then have them do it. Because not only does it give them control, it has the added benefit of taking something off your plate, but also I think the other thing too is, right, it also keeps their brain active.
Absolutely.
It keeps them thinking in a current state of mind. It can be really hard to let them do some of these things because it does.
And this is where it's an overlapping with control. It really is. I'll give an example, and this came up fairly recently. So I have a power of attorney with my mother, obviously. We're going to talk about power of attorney and all those legal documents at some point or another. But the folks at the assisted living in the administration, they know I have power of attorney. But I think with them, if they know somebody has a power of attorney, they just assume that they should go straight to the family member that has POA. And they've done that with me a couple of times. Like recently, I was on my way out and the business manager said, "Oh, I need to give you a call tomorrow." I said, "Oh, well, what for?" She said, "Well, your mother's account." And I'm not going to get into that, but basically, she can use this account to pay for hair appointments, for this, that, and the other, stuff like that. And she said, "Your mother's account's gotten really low and she needs to, we need to get a check to fill that back up." And I said, "Oh, well, you don't need to come to me for that. You can just go to her."
Right.
And I said, "I know I have power of attorney, but you've met my mother. You know she is fully
She's got the
capable of
checkbook.
writing
She
you
can
a
write the
check."
check.
And in fact, I said, "I don't even have a checkbook.
Yeah.
I've got a card, but I don't have a checkbook."
Yeah.
She can write you a check. And this has come up a couple of different times where they were asking my permission for her to get an immunization. I said, "You don't have to ask for my permission. You can ask for her permission."
Yeah.
And it's just keeping them. It's, again, this is where it really heavily overlaps with control, but it's the dignity of they're in control of their body.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So I'll give an example on the flip side, though, and it's related to managing my mom's medications. So we have, of course, the pill boxes. You guys have all seen them.
Course. I use them when we go out of town.
Monday through Sunday. And for my mom, we have a day, Monday through Sunday, and then a night, Monday through Sunday, because some of her medications are some she takes day and night, some she takes just day, some she takes just night. It's a lot. And after she came home this last stay, really my brother and I just decided that we would handle it, and we let her know we were going to handle it. And I know at first she kind of, seemed a little frustrated by that, but I was also saying to her, like, "Mom, I'm nervous when I am doing your pills now, because there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of on this day but not on this day." I mean, she even has one pill that's like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Oh, good Lord, that's awful.
Right? So when you're filling
Why would
those,
they do that?
It's
terrible.
I stand at her kitchen counter. I put my glasses on. I line up the pill bottles. My brother and I have a sheet that's printed out that has all of her medications listed, and we have noted what's day and night, and what's just day and what's just night. It's a lot. And while I know that it has been a little frustrating and probably taken a little control away and maybe a little tiny bit of dignity away from my mom, that's a safety issue.
Well, and this same thing came up with me when my mother, it was right before she moved from one assisted living to another. The medication management was really awful there, and that's dangerous. And that was one of the big reasons she needed to get out of there. Also, they didn't want her there anymore, but neither here nor there at this point, but she had a UTI and she was prescribed by an outside service, Dispatch Health. I believe we've talked about them, some antibiotics. And I went and got them, and I was going to give them to the med techs to distribute. And she said, if you give them to the med techs, it's going to be 2 days before I start getting them. No, I will do it myself. What I didn't realize, so I just kind of gave them to her. I said, just keep those, just don't let anybody see these. You're not supposed to be doing that. But I know my mom's pretty with it. But holy cow, what I didn't do was I didn't look at it because it was like, okay, you're going to take 3 today, 3 tomorrow, 2 this day, 2 this day, 2 this day, 1 this day. And she screwed it all up.
Right.
Royally screwed it all up.
Yeah.
And, and I would have messed me up probably too if I'd been given that pack of antibiotics. It was a terrible idea on my part.
Yep.
But so these are the situations. So safety has to come into this, obviously.
It is safety. And, there was one day when I went into Mom's apartment, and I don't remember exactly the whole, and I'm going to make it a short story, but I was concerned that specific day based on looking at her pill boxes. It looked like she had not taken something she should have taken that morning, and she was a little confused by it. And, she's still pretty with it, but she's got her moments. And, that was yet another sort of, to me, that added on to, I don't even want you trying to count out all of these pills right now because it is very confusing.
Right. So let's move on to the next tip. The next tip is give them jobs to do. And this is important. It's just, again, this is a little bit of overlap with control, but it's just the dignity that they're in charge of things. So it's kind of related to the last point, but whether you live with your elderly loved one or not, you can work with them to make sure they have things that they're in charge of. And it can make them feel useful, which again, it's a dignity thing. So some examples here may be that, it's their job to empty the trash can. It's their job to take the newspapers to recycling, or chopping up vegetables if they're capable of not chopping their fingers off.
Yeah, my mom chopped up some broccoli yesterday, and by the way, it stunk up the whole apartment.
Good Lord.
I'm glad she was eating fresh broccoli, but seriously.
Never mind.
Ugh.
But yes, I know it stunk up her pee, probably.
Oh my God.
You know how broccoli is.
No, that's asparagus.
That's asparagus. Sorry.
Dude, oh my God, said by the guy who really doesn't eat a lot of vegetables.
Yeah. But anyway, there's always something they can do. One example of this kind of is when Nana moved into her new assisted living. We arranged a ton of things in her apartment, but one thing she wanted to do was to arrange her pantry because, in her old assisted living, she didn't have a pantry.
Right.
Now she has a pantry. It's big. It's huge. And she was fully capable of doing it. And basically, I just walked away, put my hands up and said, do it.
Yep.
Please do it. And if you need help, let me know.
Yeah.
And, I've helped with things here and there, but, like when I go over with the groceries, I just hand her stuff to put away.
Yeah, similar, like when I take Mom's laundry back over. Now, she'll usually say, don't put, it gives me something to do. And I will try to leave it for her sometimes. Other times, I just catch myself. I quickly put it away. But recently, we redid all of her kitchen cabinets. Now, she couldn't physically do it, right? So this was one of those, I needed to help her, but I literally pulled everything out of the kitchen cabinets and then let her tell me, I need this, I need that, I need to get to that regularly, that you can put a little further back, still gave her complete control over where everything was going to go in her kitchen cabinets.
So she told you what to do and you just did it.
I just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was in charge of it.
Right.
Yeah.
She was in charge of deciding and knowing how she moves around her kitchen on a daily basis. And, I was just the workhorse, which was fun. So I think something else we can do is we can give them choices, which is really interesting because also the same thing you do when you have children, right?
And I think
you give them choices.
This is my biggest one in the whole episode, as far as I'm concerned. This is my favorite tip.
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things you can do, for example, is instead of just telling them what they're having for dinner, you give them a couple of choices. Don't, if you're in a situation where you're, helping with, them getting dressed or, pulling clothes out of a closet, don't just set them out for them the next day. Ask them what they would like to wear, right? I mean, my mom's pretty easy and has a pretty standard wardrobe, but I think about your mom. I mean, she's got outfits and jewelry.
Outfits and the jewelry to go with the outfits.
Seasonal outfits and jewelry.
Gosh.
And so
Don't even get me started.
Right, she does want to be able to make those choices. So our moms can be pretty opinionated about those things. Again, with the clothes, I think your mom probably more than my mom, but by all means, she should be able to decide what she wears on a daily basis. Just because she can't stand up out of the wheelchair and go to the closet and pick it out does not mean that she should not have a choice about what she looks like, because we know it's important. It's important in the assisted living with all those ladies. They want to look sharp.
Yeah. I have another example of this. Not so much in the current assisted living, because if we're going to go outside, we go outside to the courtyard, which is just a beautiful area to go sit outside. But in the old one, there was a little courtyard area, but we would also go sit out front sometimes because there were benches out there and it was nice out there. And so instead of saying, let's go out front, I'd say, well, do you want to go sit in the courtyard or you want to go sit out front?
Right.
You pick.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple
it's little
as that.
Stuff. It's little stuff, but it does, yes, it allows them to keep some control. Yes. Definitely. So
the next one is listen.
Yep.
Just listen. Even if your loved one has dementia of some type, they have things to say. They have things that they want to get out. Listen to their opinions. And I know it's hard, particularly if it's a dementia situation, because sometimes they don't make a lot of sense. It's just a fact. But if they'd prefer to have something happen in a certain way, even if it doesn't make sense to you, if you can do it, just do it.
Yeah. I actually had this very thing happen with Mom yesterday, and Hannah was with me, and she's had this hook in her apartment. It's kind of behind her front door where her keys have hung for the years that she's lived in this apartment. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, she now has it in her head that is not where the keys should go. I do think part of it occurred to me after I left, was that it's a little bit awkward, right? She's using the rollator around the apartment, and then her door's kind of heavy.
And then get it.
It's always been a little bit awkward, quite frankly, where that hook was, but whatever. But so suddenly she's decided, and she said, I don't know why it was there. I never put my keys there, which that's not true. She has been putting her keys there. But I started to argue with her. In fact, I think I did initially. I'm like, no, your keys have been going there for years. And then I was like, nope, whatever. And I pulled the hook off. I pulled the hammer out. I put it in a new place, exactly where she wanted it. Boom, done.
Look at you.
She's happy.
Home improvement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't look at me like I never pull a hammer out.
I'm not insulted. Looking at you like
oh my God, your eyes just got huge. It's like, what? You pulled a hammer out? Dude. Okay. All right.
Anyway, so no, but another thing, listen to their stories. This is something that happens with my mother and I when we sit outside. And actually, I think I've even said this to you. There are times when I come over there, say if I come over 3 times a week, you've even said, what do you talk about? What do you talk about that whole time? Because, usually I'll get there and for the first half hour, 45 minutes, I'm doing all the chores that she's listed. She has a physical list when I get there. But after that, we're going to sit outside or in her apartment for another 45 minutes or so before it's time for her to go up and have her old lady dinner at 4:45. But one of the things I do, if there's nothing else to talk about, I just basically kind of steer it over to something that happened 30 years ago. Yeah. And she's more than happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
A lot of elderly loved ones, their memory of yesterday may suck, but their memory of their childhood and your childhood is excellent. It's just the way the brain works. So take the time to listen, even if it's something you've heard a million jillion times.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Just give them that dignity and just let them tell the story and hear it.
Yeah.
Because really that's important too. You need these stories. I think it's important to have those family stories and pass them down.
Agreed. No, I agree. Definitely. And you are actually really good about that with your mom. My mom's a little more reticent to share some things, I think, without going into a bunch of, detail. She's got a lot of...
Her upbringing was difficult. Your upbringing was difficult.
So, a lot of things, actually, she really doesn't want to talk about. Quite frankly, I really don't want to talk about. There are a lot of things I would just as soon...
Brush under the rug and walk away.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But, if they are the type who want to tell a story, by all means, yes, you should definitely let them do that. So... This is something that I think is really important too, and it sounds really basic, but important nonetheless. And that's just give them respect. These are the people who raised you, so they deserve respect and as much of a say as possible about how things are going to go in their lives. So, no matter how comfortable you become with doing things like helping them get dressed or cleaned up, maybe ask before jumping into the task, right? So, for instance, instead of just pulling off their shirt and pants, say something like, I'm going to help you get ready for bed. Is that okay? Just respecting them, respecting their body, making sure you're not just diving in to do something and they're, as if they are some sort of, kind of inanimate object, right? The other thing I was going to say too, it's not exactly respect necessarily, but certainly, I know when my brother and I have been in hospital or skilled nursing situations with our mom, number one, it's kind of sad sometimes how often we hear from, the nursing staff or the doctors like, oh, it's so lovely that you're taking such good care of your mother. First of all, it's really sad to me because it often says to me that maybe they don't see that very much. But my standard response often is, you know what? She took care of me. It is my turn to take care of her. That does not mean that there are not frustrating moments of helping to take care of her, because there definitely are.
There are plenty.
But overall, I truly mean that. She took care of me. She sacrificed a lot of things to make sure that I had what I needed and had a roof over my head and had food on the table and, loved me and was there for me and supported me and all of those things. It is my turn to do that for her.
Final tip, keep your temper. And, no matter what your loved one is dealing with in their later years, it can cause you, us, the caregivers, frustration.
Yes, definitely.
They can be frustrating.
Yes.
It just is what it is.
Yes.
Because sometimes you just can't figure out what the hell they're thinking in their heads. So try to keep your temper as much as possible, and nothing can take away dignity faster than you as the caregiver getting mad, losing your temper, and yelling at them.
Yeah, and
it's just not acceptable.
I am guilty of it. I know my brother's been guilty of it, and we've talked about it later, how we feel bad about it, that we get, the things that we get frustrated by.
Right. And I mean, we've said it before. I actually pride myself in having a great deal of patience.
You're very patient.
But I've done it too. There was one time, I think my mother was in a bad mood, and she really hadn't told me why, but man, she was just sour. And there was something we were talking about, something she wanted to buy that I really just didn't think it was that great of an idea to spend that kind of money on the thing that she wanted to buy. And I said, really, I don't think it's that great. And she said, fine, I guess I just don't get to have the things I want.
I do remember that.
And I said, will you put away the martyr? Just stop being a martyr.
Yeah.
Why are you being a martyr? Oh, the martyr is coming out. And this is something my mother has done over the years. Believe me, it's something I've seen a million times from her. But what I didn't know was that she'd had a pretty bad morning. And I won't go into why, but she'd had kind of a crappy morning. Yeah. And it put her in a bad mood. And she did actually apologize to me later.
I remember that too. I remember that was really nice.
To get an apology out of my mother is something.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't realize it.
She hands those out much more readily now, I think, because she has her moment. She's gotten frustrated with you more than once, and she has then come back and apologized.
It's true. It's true. But the whole point of this is try to remember, again, you're dealing with an adult here, not a child. And sometimes children need to be scolded and put into timeout or whatever, but this is an 80-something-year-old person, a 90-something-year-old person, a 70, whatever they are.
Yeah.
They are adults.
Yep.
And you are an adult, and you need to treat them as much like an adult as physically possible, even if they're not acting like one.
I find myself sometimes, I have a little conversation in my head sometimes before I'm headed over to mom's. And sometimes it's because maybe I've had a busy or frustrating, challenging morning at work, and then I'm going over there, to help her with something or to visit or whatever, and I sometimes will have a conversation in my head. You're frustrated at other stuff, don't let that come out.
Exactly.
Mom. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's our episode. Thanks to everyone for listening to it. If you'd like to get in touch with us, we love questions. We love comments. I mean, and we've said it before, just shoot us a note and tell us, how's your mom? How's your dad? We can add that to our How's Your Mom? But there's a few ways to get in touch with us. Email us at caregivinggenxstyle@gmail.com. You can send us a text or a voicemail. We said this before as well. We love voicemails. 804-723-1221. No one will answer that phone, by the way. If you call, I'm not picking up. It'll just go straight to voicemail. And you can
lest you're hoping to talk to the famous Steve Mullen of Caregiving Gen X Style.
And my glorious dulcet tones. Our handle on Twitter is @GenXCaregiving. We're on Facebook. Please just go to the show notes for this episode, click on the link, and that'll get you there. We hope to hear from you soon, and have a great day.
Good night, everyone.